All right, this is episode 7 of the Low Sodium Gaming Podcast. My name is Kris, and this is Rob.
What up, guys? Let's do it.
And today we're talking about when franchises should end. When should they die? When should the developer be like, "Yo, I'm going to take you outside and shoot you to end your misery"?
I don't know. Sonic. I thought Sonic needed to die a couple of times.
Yeah, Sonic should. I think there should be long. Like some game franchises are very long in the tooth, right? And the way that they're built, some franchises can definitely do that, right? Like Final Fantasy, they tend to not be interconnected. You know, you have a new story every single time. Those are basically there are overarching themes. There are some recurring character names and things like that. They're similar, you know, like Chocobos and Moguls and, you know, Sid. But like those are different games for the most part. But like Gears of War should have ended after the third one. And
yeah,
there shouldn't have been.
hey, I agree.
There shouldn't have been games. It shouldn't be on 6 right now. Like they should be re-released. There should be a game called Gears of War that just revamps everything like God of War did.
No, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And I mentioned Sonic at the beginning because Sonic is a good example of a game that should have died or a franchise that should have died. But when they do come out with a good one, it's a good one, right?
So let me ask you this then: how many good Sonic games have come out?
There's so many Sonic games. And I think that's the problem with Sega too. It's just they dilute the franchise by coming out with so many stupid games. I think the worst one was Sonic 2006. I remember playing it, and it was when Sonic fell in love with a human. I'm like,
Oh
oh my
my
god.
god!
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that.
No, so like I never owned a Sega. Like one of my friends had a Genesis, and
No, well,
I would go
it's
over and play one, and I was like, this game is pretty
2006.
cool. But I
2006
never
Sonic.
touched anything else after that except for Sonic Generations. Like, so I have that on Steam, and I
Yeah,
probably
that was a
put
good one.
two hours into it. And from
That
my
Sonic
understanding,
Generations was good. Yeah,
yeah, people
Sonic.
say it's good, and like I want to get back into it. It's in my backlog. I plan on playing it. You know, it's a lot of same story, right? But yeah, any other Sonic game that I tried to play before that, like the ones on the Dreamcast, look really cool. But from my understanding, they suck.
Sonic Adventure, the first one and the second one, I love those two. Like those were really good games. I had the Sega Dreamcast. I was a big fan of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. That's what got me into Sonic, those two games.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to
So
support Sonic since then. But sometimes, man, it's like, bruh, this is terrible.
So, like, do you think, and like we all know, it's done off of money. It's done to capitalize off of nostalgia, right? Like the reason Mario has been going on as long as it has is because it's instantly recognizable. I will say that those games they tend to innovate on themselves game after
Exactly.
game after game, and you can
Exactly.
justify those games going on. But like I mentioned in the last episode, Halo. I feel like Halo should have ended after Reach. Like Halo Reach should have been the end of the Halo franchise
I
for a
disagree.
while.
I disagree with you. So like, I get you with Gears of War. It's like Gears of War had a good ending, and that's it. I think Master Chief is a person, or not even a person. It's like a legend that comes out when he is needed. It's like Doom. So like in Doom, the way that they address him coming out whenever, it's when he is needed. So when he's not needed, they're putting him back in the box. But when he's needed, he'll come back out. So that Doom person is the same Doom guy from the original
Yeah,
Doom.
yeah, yeah.
And they just that's how they put it.
But
So
see,
like the original Doom,
the
obviously, it's completely different from the Doom that we have now, and it's a lot more innovative, I think. So
okay,
like
my
the
counter
thing,
argument to that is that world kind of lends to that, right?
So I think Master Chief can lend to that too. I
I
think I
he,
think Master Chief. If you think about it, Master Chief Chief has the same, like almost like not the same costume, but the same idea that like he is just a being of utter destruction,
but
right?
he's still human, right?
He's a cyborg, and right. So
He's
like,
still like the reason Cortana picked him, if I'm remembering correctly, is that he was lucky, and a good part, a good storytelling mechanic or a good storytelling method would have been when Chief's luck runs out, or when he felt like they could have put Chief on a deep sleep. We could have foregone Halo 4 and 5, gave him like a 10-year resting period, and bam, in 10 years, they could have been Master Chief is back. Everyone would have been hyped, and they would have built that back up. They could have had other franchises that they could have been working on and putting money into, giving their brains a rest. I think that's why Halo 4 and 5 aren't as well received as
no,
people
I
want
think
them to be, is
no, I think
because it's just
no.
it's not hitting those points. They're not
Halo 4 and 5. The problem with Halo 4 and 5 is that they did the opposite of what they did for 1 through 3. So Halo 4 was too narrow in scope. So like there were narrow corridors, basically narrow levels. Whereas from Halo
it
1 to
needed a
3,
break. They
well,
needed a like 343 took it over from Bungie, correct?
it's true. They did take it over from Bungie,
How
but
long
they
how
but
long
they
after
but
Reach
they
was 4 dropped?
so Reach came out in 2010, if I remember. Yeah, Reach
Hmm.
came out in 2010, and Halo 4 came out in 2013 or 14.
They
I
needed more
think
time.
they probably needed more time. Absolutely. But I also remember that Halo Reach was developed by Bungie. So like
Hmm.
314 might have already been developing Halo 4. And Halo 4 wasn't bad. It's just not exactly what the fans wanted. They wanted a more open world game. And especially like given that they have been coming out with so many, like it's like they took a step back instead of taking a step forward. And that's the main issue. So Halo Infinite tried to correct that, but Halo Infinite was too big in scope, so they had to pare it down.
Yeah. And so like my look on this, right, is that I don't necessarily think you have to absolutely kill a franchise. You can't make another game within that franchise. You can tell different stories, like ODST, right? You can tell the stories of the ODST without necessarily including Master Chief within that. He can be a legend that is used to inspire the troops and stuff like that. But
That's what they
having
tried to
him,
do in Halo 5 though. Like
yeah,
they
but
took Halo 5, they took Master Chief, like he only played him for like 2 or 3 levels, and the rest of it was
yeah,
this other
I
Spartan.
forget his name. But like you gotta like there's an issue in there when you have freaking it's mass like again you start talking about who Master Chief is, what he can do, and then this other Spartan Locke is going hand to hand with him, like, and they're no, just no, like Master Chief would have bodied the guy, right? Like I don't
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
I Master Chief would body Lock, and he should have, but he didn't. And like whatever, that's the story. That's where they decided to go. I don't agree with it. I still enjoyed it for what it was, but it didn't garner a second playthrough, right?
But that's the thing though. That the thing about Halo is that it, they 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 have to be innovative in developing Master Chief. It's like his struggles and his past, and put it to light in this new series. They decided not to do that and focus on other characters, and that's why they failed because
He shouldn't.
they introduced too many
He shouldn't be in
characters.
the game. That's the point I'm getting to. Is like these should be because there's wars and stuff going on throughout this universe that they've created. And so you can tell different stories, you can have some similarities and stuff like that, but Master Chief shouldn't be in the game That's where I'm trying to get at. Like, if you want to keep a franchise alive, you still want to tell those stories. It's kind of the same way I feel about Star Wars. Like, I kind of I didn't want a Han Solo movie. I didn't want an Obi-Wan show. Now, if these are good, yeah, sure, but they tend not to be. And I'm excited for Obi-Wan. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. I want to see it.
settle the fuck down.
I don't I do, but like there's a mystique behind that. There's mystery and stuff behind that. So what was he doing? What was going on? And
Yeah.
you don't have to tell every itty bitty little part of that. Like, I really want to see, like, we're like, either as a video game or a movie. I want to see something from the old Republic in, like,
Yeah,
in the vein of Jedi Fallen Order. I want to tell the story of Darth Bane. Like, he exists in the new continuity. Tell his
yeah.
story. That guy was a badass. He killed off, like, before the Rule of Two. There was a Sith Order. He fucking murdered all of them.
Oh no, that was pretty awesome.
So, like,
I read the 3 books of Darth Bane. That was a really good
I
book.
only read the one. I only read the last one, and, like, I'm like, oh my god, like, I need to see this. I need to either play this or see this, right?
Yeah.
And I, like, there is, when you build out these universes like that, I really think, like, there's a point where a story ends, right? So,
Yeah.
even, like, you mentioned God of War last episode. That
Yeah,
story ended. Like, God of War 1 through 3, and, like, those offshoot games and stuff, like that story concluded, right? And
it
then,
is true. It is true. So like what Halo should have done is introduce a completely new story and new villains because in this in God of War it's basically the same Kratos but
and
it's a completely different story,
different
different
environment, different
uh,
pantheon.
different gameplay.
Yeah,
Like even
yeah.
though there is still very much action oriented. Like the fact is that axe is freaking awesome. You know
A
what I mean,
simple change, and they even bring back the Blades of Chaos, and you're like,
I
oh, that's
and
I
the way
didn't think
that
this
they
would work, but it
introduce it,
does. Yeah.
the way they introduce it is really
It
epic.
has weight to it. It has meaning. Is bringing it back. He's confronting the trauma that he's caused and he's received, and it's this amazing storytelling device, right? And you feel that, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the shooting in Halo. I mean, you can feel its DNA in Destiny 2, and I love it. But at the same time, it's like we're
I'll
on.
give you no. I'll give you this though. Like again, like you don't have to completely revamp everything from the
No,
gameplay,
no.
but if you change one thing or add one thing that would completely changes the dynamic of it. So one thing that I'm sure you've heard about Halo Infinite is the grappling hook.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
It's like
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, so the grappling hook does change the dynamic, and it feels so good. It feels like it was always necessary to have that grappling hook in the game. So if you add those things, a franchise, in at least in terms of a gameplay, can survive. I think Halo and any other franchise, they don't need to die. Like Mario, for example, it's like Mario is consistently is consistently coming out with new games, but it always comes out with a new mechanic that is
Yes,
being
I
introduced, and it's not repeated.
so and again, you kind of, what we're getting at is that oversaturation is bad, right? Like, when you start talking about, like, Call of Duty, and Call of Duty has released a game every single year for more than a decade now, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, it's been a while. They've been doing this for a while, and it's like
It,
you get
it's
fatigued.
hard.
Yeah, you get fatigued from it. You don't want to engage with it. Like, yeah, I like this franchise, but I don't they didn't change enough for me. Or, they're telling these stories, but do I really care? Like, how is it that this is still going on, or that we're still having these problems? And, like,
As long as they introduce a new mechanic that is not repeated from previous games or even improve on a mechanic, I think they could survive. The problem is that like it's like any development, right? It's like as when you keep coming out with new games every year, it's like your development team dries up with ideas. So that's what happened with Call of Duty. This last Call of Duty Vanguard,
Yeah,
I like that was the prime example. Apparently, the people that were working in Modern Warfare, like they had a couple of new ideas, and that's why the campaign was so popular, even though it was so short.
yeah. So I think there's two things, that new mechanic and the story behind it. If we're talking about a story driven game, if we're talking about a single player story driven game, you really have to have that reason to be there. And I think that's kind of what made me kind of think of this topic in the first place, right? Is like, okay, like I'm listening to the reviews and stuff for Halo Infinite, and it's like, yeah, like they kind of don't directly address what's going on in 4 and 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
Mhm.
you're kind
Well,
of go ahead.
so they do address things that happen in 4 and 5.
But
I
you
think
you
that
don't see like they like it's kind of like this is after that, right? Like 4 and 5, like whatever happened ended. You're not you like they don't have you
that
actively take
it,
part in that.
exactly what I like about I kind of like what they did here. They had 4 and 5 be like their own. It's like it's their own series right there.
Hmm.
Like 4 and 5 happened. The ending of 4 5 closes off that chapter. Halo Infinite is a completely new chapter in the story of Master Chief, and now it's a more personal one. Like now you're seeing like that Master Chief is vulnerable. All right, like it's not that he's even vulnerable; it's you can see little parts here and there that he really does feel something,
Yeah.
and like they're getting at something, and I'm hoping that they can continue that. Listen, now they have something good. It's like they can definitely continue going with Halo, the next Halo, as long as they freaking improve on their graphics and expand on the idea that you can travel wherever in the ring. Like it's like they had a vision and they were cut short because they were encompassing too much, and like not for nothing, but Microsoft didn't do them a solid by having them develop a game also for the original Xbox,
Nah.
which is, by the way, the reason why Cyberpunk failed so badly because they were focused also on the original systems. So when Cyberpunk came out, it was okay on the PC, disastrous, absolutely disastrous on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Like I also noticed that the new Batman game, Gotham Knights, completely
Yeah, they
canceled
did.
Xbox One and
It's a
PlayStation
good
4.
call. It's a good call. They like
It's time. It's fucking time. Just let it go. Seriously, it's Microsoft. Let it go, or you're gonna sink your own ship. It's like, I'm sorry. Like those of you that don't have an Xbox Series X, like I get it. Like you can't find one, but shit, it's like those people that did pay fucking $500 for those systems expect
to
high
get
quality
yeah to
games.
get a high quality out of it. And
Exactly.
so like, kind of driving this home and wrapping it up a little bit. I think that games should either be retired or put on a rest period, right? I don't think you should be getting like if you're not getting that well received feedback, like your game isn't being well received. The feedback that you got is like, yo, this isn't doing anything for the fan base. Like, retire the game for a little bit. Go do something else. I know 343 was basically hired to be the next Halo people,
Right.
but they haven't really knocked it out the park on every level, right? Like, I really feel like,
They
hey,
haven't,
let them do something else.
they haven't, but they did gain reputation
They
with
done some
Halo
solid. I'm
Infinite.
not saying they're not doing solid work. I'm just saying like they're not meeting the expectations that people have for it. And then like there are other games that are just fucking tired. Like Gears of War is fucking tired. Sonic needs to end, right? Like you have way more bad than good. Gears of War to me, I haven't played anything past 3 because that story was done in my head, and I was like, what the fuck is
I know I get it with Gears of War. That wasn't three for
what
three.
are we on now? What are we on now? 6?
Yeah, well, it's five, but like if you count Judgment, that would be six.
But there was
So
another there was there was like a prequel which
that's Judgment. That's
okay,
Judgment.
that's Judgment. Okay. So we have like a total of six of those games. You have what, 4 Uncharted's, you know,
But Uncharted did finish when it
the
did.
Uncharted
So like
finished.
Drake,
Uncharted finished, yes.
at least Drake's story finished. And
Yes.
that mad respect for that. Now, like obviously now, like I think they're still developing Uncharted, but it's going to be with a different person, and that isn't a bad thing either.
But see, that, and you know what, we're talking about like those cash cow, those mainstays in a console, right? Like if you remember Crash Bandicoot, and that developed into The Last of Us, and that's where I'm getting at. Like develop something and do something that's real big, like go move on, grow up. That's where I'm coming from. Like do something bigger, do something better. Like Remedy went from doing Max Payne, Alan Wake,
Control.
Control, right? And they took their lessons learned from these other games and they made better ones, or they made interesting ones. They along with the gameplay and the story, they're getting better at all of that.
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
they're pushing that forward, and that's what I'm saying, right? Like you see people drum up hype. It like if when I turn 50, are we going to be hyping up Halo 15?
I mean, I think so, man. I
I,
honestly
I
no, I honestly you gotta understand that. Like now I know what you're the argument you're making, but you gotta think of hate Master Chief now like Batman, right? Batman doesn't die. Batman is a legend now. You know
Batman is a comic, and they reset comics.
exactly.
They
So like
reset
now,
comics. They give them
so
different writers.
but maybe that's what like Halo probably needs. It's just
Give
that
it a
like
break and reset it. Yes.
maybe I don't know. I think they did a pretty good. I don't know. I feel like I'm close with Halo. Like I'm a fan of the Master Chief, and I am happy that the 343 finally listened to the fans and they
Hmm.
focus on Master Chief. They didn't focus on anybody else. I don't care about anybody else. It's like and the thing about Master Chief is that like we grew up with him.
Yeah.
So like I do feel an attachment towards it. So like if you tell me another story, I'm not gonna care that
So
much.
like, and I think what where I'm getting at is in the story for him, and then you can continue other stories within that universe. It doesn't even have to be called Halo. You get what I'm saying? But you could be like, when you're telling the story and have the description for it, it's like, hey, this is within the Halo universe. But I do feel like stories do come to an end. Like, yeah, Master Chief is a cyborg, but like luck runs out eventually. Like,
I don't know, man. Like
yeah.
Mario games are always in the same universe, but they continue. They tell different stories within it, and
Do
I
they?
mean,
There's
I,
stories in Mario. There's no story in Mario. There,
there's
there, there's no story in Mario.
I mean, there isn't, but it's the same
It's
character.
it's the gameplay that keeps people there, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't like
Exactly.
Nintendo. That's all it is.
I know that you don't like
I
Nintendo.
just I don't like Nintendo. I
Uh,
like they should really stop making consoles. Just make games, and I'll hop back into it. But until then, if the only way I can play Mario is by buying a Nintendo console, you can cancel it.
Okay, so my final argument to this before we close off is that I think that franchises should die if it gets too much to the point where they're releasing every year and there's no new gameplay. So that's the thing that I think that's when franchise should die.
So,
Now,
what
I
game would
don't
you
think
say fits that? Like, what game do you think meets that criteria for you?
well, so for example, there came a point where Sonic was at that point, but thanks for the movies, it's a hit again.
I
People want
I
it.
knew you were gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. People want to bring it back. Now, there are other games. I'm not too familiar. Like, for example, you said it yourself, Gears of War 5. I didn't like Gears of War 4 or 5 because it is the same gameplay. And like, it's
It
like,
looks
all right,
pretty though.
it looks pretty, but it's still the same
Yeah.
gameplay.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that entices me. Like, Gears of War 3 had such a conclusive ending.
It
They
really
are
did.
like what happened? So now it's like the poor world is just continuously being freaking fucked up. It's like, all right, take it, let the world take a break in that universe, right? And
Yeah.
I'm sure other games that I don't come to mind right now. Like, I'm sure other games are like that, and it's one of those things. Give the world a break. It's like it's unrealistic now, and but when it comes to games like God of War, when it comes to games like Halo, if you introduce a new mechanic, it doesn't have to be like, and it doesn't show up year by year because Halo doesn't come out with a game year by year,
Mm-mm.
unlike Call of Duty, right? Like, yeah, I think they will survive. And I don't think they deserve to die. I think
I
Call of
think
Duty
games
should
like
follow
Halo.
the same step.
I think games like Halo should do like Master Chief and go into cryo for a little bit and come back, at a 10-year time frame. They're like,
Yeah,
hey, let's go ahead and revisit this and see what we can do. But like
but
this
but
idea,
that's the thing though. Like, you're talking, so like you're making Halo seem like they come up with video games
they don't.
every year. They
But
come
but
like
the
the
point
last
I'm trying
Halo
to
came
make
out in
though,
2015.
the point I'm trying to make though is even with that time frame that they had, what did you get? You got a grappling hook.
I mean, it is
You
still
you
an
got
oh,
you got a grappling
and
hook and
it's still
you got
and
repeating
and
environments.
yeah, it is still an open world, and I think it's really good. Like, I think it's way better than freaking Legend of Zelda and Breath of the Wild, and that's an open world too. And for some reason, every list that comes out, oh, it is the best Zelda game ever. I'm like, no, it is not. It is it is the basic open world game. Okay, to each his own. But still, like,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
not my.
again. Elden Ring has the best open world in years. Um, I I'm still on that fence. Like it, yeah, you're right. It doesn't come out all that often, but I don't think they did much with it with that time that it took between five and Infinite. I think they needed more time to kind of develop whatever the hell they needed, or it was probably project management. They had poor project management and they didn't really know where they were going until maybe a year or two before the game actually came out. So
It always happens that way too.
yeah, so I like that's what I think it really is. Like they didn't have defined goals because that was the same problem with Anthem. They didn't have those goals and those things set in stone before they really started putting in that work, and they didn't have much time to do it. That's what I'm assuming with Halo. Maybe that's been said somewhere, but that's what
Listen,
I'm assuming.
whatever happened, that like extra year was necessary because Halo Infinite is look, I do feel that they could have done more with the dream that they had, but as it stands, Halo Infinite is one of the best Halo games out there. And that's a lot to say, right? Because there are 6 Halo games of the original series. Halo Infinite is still considered among the best in any list. That's how good it is. Imagine what they could have done. It's like if they actually fulfilled their scope and a little bit more organized. So
Yeah,
I give props to 343. And to you, my fellow podcaster, if you're gonna talk shit, you need to play Halo Infinite.
I do. I played the PvP. I mean, it's Halo. I like I don't care enough. Like I don't care enough. Like whatever they put out to try and convince me to play the game did not make me care enough to buy it or try and play it. I played the PvP. It does feel like Destiny, except I can't float when I jump. And yeah,
Yeah, you're a fan of Destiny, though.
Yeah, I am, because there's new shit that constantly comes out with it.
I'm not a fan of Destiny. I played it. It's boring.
It's not.
It's boring.
I mean, to each his own. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. That was a good talk, and
talking shit to each other now.
but yeah,
Alright.
go ahead, and if you agree, disagree, let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and we'll catch you on the next one. Later.
All right, take care, guys. Bye.